I found my sister's hidden diary, and it revealed a dark family secret. Reddit stories. They say every family hides something. A forgotten photograph, a misremembered story, a name you're not supposed to mention. But I never imagined the biggest secret in our family would be hidden in the folds of a dusty purple diary tucked beneath a loose floorboard in my sister's bedroom. Before I tell you how it ruined everything, how it turned my world inside out, I need to go back. Because this story didn't start with that discovery. It started years earlier, with something far more ordinary: silence. We were the picture-perfect family, or so everyone thought. My parents were the kind of couple who still held hands at dinner parties, who laughed at each other's bad jokes like it was the first time they'd heard them. My mom ran a small catering business from home, and my dad worked in insurance. Boring, right? But safe, predictable. My older sister, Eliza, was the golden child. Beautiful, smart, the kind of girl teachers adored and boys stumbled over themselves trying to impress. Me, I was just the younger sibling living in her shadow. I didn't mind, honestly. I loved her. Everyone did. We lived in a nice house in a quiet neighborhood where the loudest sound at night was the wind pushing against the sycamore trees out front. We were the family people envied from afar. Smiling Christmas cards, choreographed birthday parties, matching pajamas on New Year's Eve. But what those photos never showed, what no one outside the house ever saw, were the cracks beneath the surface. And it all began with Eliza changing. It was subtle at first. She started locking her door, staying up late. Her laugh, once loud and reckless, got quieter. She was still doing well in school, still helping mom out with her events, but something about her changed. Her eyes lost their light. Her hugs became quick and distracted. When I asked her what was wrong, she'd brush it off, say she was tired or had a lot on her plate. That was Eliza, always calm, always in control. But I knew her better than anyone, and I knew she was hiding something. Then, one day, she left. No warning, no goodbye. Just a scribbled note on her desk and an empty closet. I was 14. My parents were devastated. Mom cried for days, then weeks. Dad didn't talk much, just kept calling people, driving around aimlessly at night, always returning alone. They called the police, filed a report, put up posters. But nothing came of it. It was like Eliza had vanished. Some said she ran away. Others whispered about boys, bad influences, maybe drugs. But I knew Eliza. None of that made sense. The months that followed were a blur. My parents fought more. Meals became quieter. The house felt colder. Eventually, the search slowed down. People stopped asking. And life, in its cruel way, went on. I finished school, got into college, came home for holidays to the same quiet, hollow house. Mom focused more on work. Dad grew grayer. And Eliza's room remained untouched, like a shrine to a past none of us could truly let go of. Then, last summer, everything changed again. It was late July. I had come home after my first year of university. One night, while trying to find an old charger in Eliza's room, I noticed something strange about one of the floorboards near the window. It looked slightly raised. I pried it up, more out of boredom than curiosity. And there it was, the diary. Purple velvet, frayed at the edges, with a tiny silver lock snapped open. My hands shook as I picked it up. I knew I shouldn't read it. But I also knew I would. I remember sitting cross-legged on her bed, the late afternoon light spilling in through the blinds, dust dancing in the air like frozen sparks. I turned to the first page. Her handwriting hit me like a punch to the chest. Curvy, elegant, unmistakably hers. The entries started normally. School gossip, plans with friends, thoughts about college. But as I flipped through the pages, the tone darkened. Her entries became erratic, emotional, like she was unraveling in slow motion. Then I found the page that changed everything. I think I made a mistake telling him. She had written. He said we'd talk about it when Mom and Dad weren't home. But I know what I saw in his face. Fear, guilt. He knew I was right. At first, it didn't make sense. Who was him? What had she told him? I kept reading. The next few entries were frantic. Some words scribbled out, some pages partially torn. Then came the entry dated just days before she disappeared. He said no one would believe me, that it would ruin the family, that I was being dramatic. But I remember I was 7, the red sweater, the cold basement, the way he locked the door. I'm not crazy. I remember everything now. And if he thinks I'll stay silent forever, he's wrong. I couldn't breathe. My mind raced. Who was she talking about? A neighbor, a friend, someone from school. But the answer was in the next sentence. I wish Dad would just tell the truth. I'm tired of pretending. I want to scream. I want to burn everything. I dropped the diary like it had stung me. My heart pounded in my chest so loudly I could hear it. That couldn't be right. She must have been mistaken, confused, traumatized by something else. But the more I read, the more certain it became she wasn't confused. She was reliving it, every terrifying detail. In her own words, the floor shifted beneath me, metaphorically and literally. I felt like I was falling into a pit I didn't even know existed. My father, the man who tucked me in at night, who helped me with math homework, who grilled burgers in the backyard while humming Sinatra. Eliza was saying he hurt her. And worse, he covered it up. Lied. Let her suffer in silence. And I had never seen it. None of us had. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront him? Show Mom? Go to the police? What if it was a mistake? But what if it wasn't? I kept the diary hidden for days. My mood shifted. I became jumpy, anxious. My mom noticed, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her. Not yet. I needed to be sure. So I went looking. I dug into old photo albums, videos, anything that could give me a clue. And slowly, little details began to surface. Moments that didn't feel strange before now dripped with unease. The way Eliza would flinch when Dad entered the room. How she never sat next to him at dinner. The time she asked to stay over at a friend's house every weekend for a year. Things that once seemed like quirks now formed a pattern. I started having nightmares. I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, with Eliza's words echoing in my mind. I remember everything now. It felt like I was living someone else's life, like the world I had grown up in had never truly existed. Every memory felt suspect. Every smile, every holiday, every family joke. It all felt poisoned. One evening, I found myself alone with Dad. We were watching a movie. I couldn't focus. He laughed at something on the screen, and I felt physically ill. I turned to look at him, really look at him, and suddenly I couldn't see my father anymore. I saw a man with secrets. A man who might have destroyed my sister's life. And I couldn't sit there any longer. I stood up and walked out of the room. My heart was racing again. I went straight to Eliza's room, pulled the diary from where I had hidden it, and stared at it for what felt like hours. What do you do when your whole life has been built on a lie? I knew I had to tell someone. But who? And what would they do with the truth? That night, I made a decision. One that would shatter the last remnants of our happy little family. One that would burn everything to the ground. That night, with the diary clenched in my chest, I paced my room until dawn. My thoughts collided like speeding cars. Chaotic, loud, each one sparking another. I kept hearing Eliza's words. I remember everything now. I couldn't unsee the panic behind those pages, the aching need to be believed. She hadn't written it for anyone else. She never meant for it to be found. That's what made it real. That's what made it undeniable. She wasn't performing. She was confessing to herself because no one else had listened. I knew I had to be the one to listen now. For her? For the girl who had quietly suffered in the room next to mine while I was laughing at cartoons and asking her for help with my science project. Guilt swept through me like a wave crashing through a dam. How many times had I missed the signs? How many times had I chosen comfort over curiosity? But knowing the truth and doing something with it are two different battles. And I wasn't ready for war yet. I didn't confront him. Not then. Instead, I started watching. Closely. My father had always seemed so normal. So painfully, boringly normal. The kind of dad who made corny jokes at the dinner table and walked around in mismatched socks. But now everything felt calculated. I started noticing patterns, little things. He always knocked before entering a room. always kept doors open when he was with me or Mom. He never touched people when he didn't have to. Was that guilt or caution? I started keeping my own journal. Scraps of observations, odd memories, inconsistencies. Like the time Mom told me Eliza fell down the stairs when she was 8, but I remembered hearing her scream long before the fall. Or how Eliza had stopped going to sleepovers after one particular weekend with family friends, only to cry herself to sleep for days. Every memory took on a sinister edge. It was like learning to read a new language, one written in pain, silence, and things left unsaid. Still, I didn't say anything. Not to Mom, not to my friends. I was scared. Scared that if I said it out loud, it would make it real. That somehow, by keeping it inside, I could still cling to the illusion that maybe, just maybe, there was some explanation. Some detail I hadn't yet uncovered that would make it all okay again. But that illusion shattered when I received an email. It was from an address I didn't recognize, and the subject line was just a single word. Sorry. My heart dropped. I clicked it. No greeting. No signature. Just a few short lines. I know you found the diary. I know what you must think of me. I didn't leave because I hated you. I left because I couldn't stay. Please don't trust him. You deserve the truth too. No name, but I didn't need one. I knew it was Eliza. She was alive. After all these years, after the posters faded and the search ended and the silence settled in like dust. She was still out there, still watching, still hiding. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. Then I replied, Eliza, where are you? Please come home. Or at least talk to me. I waited. Minutes passed. Hours. Days. Nothing. The address went cold. But it had been her. The language, the rhythm, the sorrow. It was her. And if she was watching, if she had reached out, it meant she still cared. It meant she still wanted someone to know. That changed everything. The next night, I went to my mom. We sat at the kitchen table where the wood had worn thin near the edges. I told her I had found something. Her eyes darkened with concern but not surprise. I handed her the diary. She hesitated, then opened it. Her hands trembled as she read. The silence was unbearable. I watched her eyes move across the pages, watched her expression morph from confusion to horror to something deeper. Something I didn't expect. Relief. She didn't scream. She didn't deny it. She closed the diary slowly and placed it on the table like it was a piece of fragile glass. And then, barely above a whisper, she said, I always suspected something. I felt like the room tilted. You what? Her voice was hollow. There were signs, things I ignored. For years. She tried to tell me once. I thought she was lying up. May didn't want to believe it. Because if I did, she trailed off, wiping her eyes. I failed her. I failed both of you. I couldn't speak. My mother, the woman I thought had been as blindsided as me, had known. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to feel guilt rotting inside her for nearly a decade. She told me how, after Eliza disappeared, she began to put pieces together. But by then, it was too late. She had no proof. And she had already chosen denial once. That shame chained her to silence. But now, she said, her voice shaking, we can't stay quiet anymore. We decided we'd go to the police. Bring them the diary. Try to contact Eliza again. Do something, anything. But first, I needed to know what she knew. I needed to understand the woman who had raised me, who had watched the same man tuck me in at night, and somehow lived with this monster in our house. So she told me everything, about the weekend trip when Eliza was 7 and came home changed. How she refused to be alone with Dad after that. How she started getting stomach aches, nightmares, slipping grades. How Mom caught Eliza tearing pages out of a book one day, sobbing uncontrollably, whispering he lied. She chalked it up to puberty. Stress. A phase. She didn't want to believe anything worse. But worse came anyway. She told me about the night Eliza ran away. How she found a note addressed to her that she never showed anyone. He won't admit it, it read. And I won't stay quiet. But you can protect the other one. Please don't let him touch her. Please. Mom burned it. Out of fear. Out of shame. She told herself she was protecting me, but really she was protecting herself from the truth. That night, she slept in my room. We locked the door. Dad asked what was going on, but we told him I had a nightmare. He believed us. He always did. The next morning, she sent him on an errand, milk or something, and we copied the entire diary, scanned every page, uploaded it to cloud storage. Then we printed a set of pages and placed them in an envelope. We didn't go to the police. Not yet. First, we confronted him. We waited until dinner. He was relaxed, talking about some football game he wanted to watch later. And then Mom put the envelope on the table. He looked at it, then at us. "What's this?" he asked. "Read it," she said. He opened it. His eyes moved across the page slowly. His expression didn't change, not at first. Then a flicker, a twitch of the jaw, a tremble in his fingers. He set the papers down, looked at us, and what he said chilled me to the bone. "You're going to ruin everything over this." No denial, no shock, just frustration, like we had inconvenienced him, like we had spilled wine on the carpet. "You did this?" Mom whispered. "You did this to her, to me, to them?" He didn't speak. He stood up slowly, took a step toward us, and for the first time in my life, I saw it. The darkness behind his eyes. The one Eliza had written about. The one I had never noticed because I never knew to look. But my mother was ready. She pulled a small object from her pocket, her phone, already recording. "I think that's enough," she said. "You should leave now and don't come back." He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He just stared at us for a long moment. Then he left. We changed the locks that night. The next day, we filed a report, brought the diary, the copies, the email, everything. The investigation started, slow, hesitant, full of red tape. But it was moving. And then, out of nowhere, a second email arrived. This one was longer. It began with 3 words that made my breath catch. "I'm coming back." The email was short, barely a paragraph, but it sent a tidal wave through everything I thought I was prepared for. "I'm coming back. I can't hide anymore. I'm scared, but I need to see for myself what's left. I don't know what I'll find, but I have to know. I'll be there soon. Please don't tell anyone, There was no date, no location, no signature. Just those words, heavy with dread and hope. I must have read them 50 times. I didn't tell Mom right away. I couldn't. I wanted to believe Eliza's return would be the closing chapter to a nightmare, a moment of reconnection and healing. But something about the way she phrased it, "What's left," it felt final. It didn't sound like a reunion. It sounded like someone preparing for a confrontation, maybe even a reckoning. I watched my mother in the days that followed. She was trying to hold herself together, pretending she had control, but she didn't. She was unraveling quietly. She'd stare too long at the kettle boiling or forget what she was saying mid-sentence. Every knock on the door made her jump. Every unknown number on the caller ID made her hesitate. I wanted to tell her Eliza was coming. I wanted to ease her burden. But I was afraid. What if Eliza didn't want to see her? What if she blamed her more than she blamed him? The police had begun digging, but without Eliza present, it was slow. They questioned my father, who denied everything. He even showed up to the house one day, calm as if the past few weeks hadn't detonated our family. He asked to talk. Mom refused to open the door. He stood outside for 10 minutes, then left a letter in the mailbox. I read it later that night. It was a masterpiece of gaslighting. He called us, confused, said we'd misunderstood, claimed Eliza had been unstable for years and accused us of feeding into delusions. No apology, no accountability, just venom disguised as concern. That letter solidified something inside me. He was dangerous. He was still trying to control the story. But Eliza's return, that could blow everything apart. 3 days after the email, it happened. I was alone at home in the kitchen folding laundry on the table. I heard the knock. 3 soft taps. I froze. It was mid-afternoon, the sun casting golden rays across the counter. A breeze was rustling the tree outside. Everything felt peaceful, too peaceful. When I opened the door, I didn't recognize her at first. She was thinner, paler, Her hair was longer, darker, tied in a messy braid over her shoulder. She wore sunglasses and a gray hoodie. A backpack hung from one shoulder, frayed and sagging. But it was her. Eliza. She nodded once, lips trembling. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to hug her, but she flinched when I moved. So I stepped back and let her in. She walked slowly, scanning the hallway like she was stepping into a museum of old trauma. Her fingers grazed the edge of the table, the back of the couch. When she reached the staircase, she paused. "Has anything changed?" she asked quietly. "No," I said. "Your room's the same." She didn't go up. She sat on the bottom step instead and pulled off her sunglasses. Her eyes were swollen, rimmed with exhaustion, but they were still hers. Still Eliza. "I didn't think I'd ever come back here," she said, barely above a whisper. "I thought I could stay gone forever." I sat beside her. I didn't ask where she'd been. I didn't need to. I could see the years in her posture. "I read it," I said. "Your diary." She closed her eyes. I was afraid of that. "I needed to know," I told her. "And now Mom knows, too." We confronted him. She turned her head slightly. "He denied it, didn't he?" "Oh, of course." She nodded. "He always does, even to himself." There was a long silence. "I want to see Mom," she said. "She's at the store. I didn't tell her you were coming." I wasn't sure if. "It's okay," Eliza said. "I'm not sure either." She finally stood, slowly ascending the stairs. I followed at a distance. She opened the door to her room and stood in the threshold, looking at everything exactly as she'd left it. The fairy light still draped across the window, the bookshelf with her old favorites, the corkboard with faded photos and pushpins. She walked to her desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside were folded notes, dried petals, and a broken locket. She stared at it for a moment before closing it again. "I kept waiting for someone to find me," she said. "But no one did. And then I realized maybe no one was looking anymore." "We never stopped," I said. "Mom never stopped." She looked at me, her face hard to read. "She did for a while. You were too young to notice. But after I left, she collapsed." I watched from afar. She wanted to believe she'd imagined it all, that I was just being dramatic. But deep down, I think she always knew. "She knows now," I said. "She's not hiding anymore. We're trying to help the police build a case." Eliza sat on the edge of her bed, exhaling deeply. "It won't be easy. He's good at this. He's always been good at pretending. She has recordings. We have the diary. And you." She cut me off. "I'm not ready to testify. I don't know if I ever will be." That gutted me. But I understood. "Can I stay the night?" she asked. Of course. That evening, when Mom came home and saw her, she dropped everything and just stared. No words, no screams, just tears. They hugged, trembling, and for the first time in years, our family was in the same room again. Fractured, scarred, but together. Eliza didn't sleep much. I heard her pacing at night, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing bitterly under her breath. The next day, she left before dawn. She didn't say where she was going, only that she'd be in touch. She left behind a letter. It was addressed to both of us. "I'm not ready for the courtroom. Not yet, but I'm ready to speak, to tell the world. I'm going to tell my story another way. And when I do, he'll know he can't silence me anymore. Thank you for believing me. That saved my life. I don't know what comes next, but whatever it is, I'm not afraid of it anymore. E." The next few weeks were surreal. Eliza disappeared again, but this time she was present online. A blog appeared, anonymous at first, just called The Basement Door. The entries were devastating, detailed, intimate, raw. She didn't name him outright, but the picture she painted left little doubt. Her words spread like wildfire. Survivors reached out. Advocates, journalists. Within a month, the police reopened her case with new urgency. But that's when something unexpected happened. Someone else came forward, another girl, from a different city, different timeline, different life. She had known our father through his work, and her story mirrored Eliza's in chilling detail. And then another came. And another. It turned out Eliza wasn't the only one. And our father wasn't who we thought he was. He was worse, so much worse. It started like a slow leak in the ceiling, barely noticeable at first, just a whisper of moisture gathering above our heads. But once the weight became too much, the whole thing burst open, soaking everything beneath it. That's what the aftermath felt like. A steady drip of new revelations, each one darker than the last, until the story we thought we knew disintegrated entirely. The second woman came forward only a few weeks after Eliza's blog went live. Her name was withheld for privacy, but the details she provided, his job title, the conference in Arizona, the evening meeting at the hotel, matched exactly with dates we later found on his calendar backups. She wrote to the blog under a pseudonym, Red Scarf, and described how she'd been invited for a mentorship dinner when she was barely 17. It sounded so similar, so rehearsed. It made my stomach churn. She hadn't known about Eliza. She just happened to stumble upon the basement door while searching for support forums. That's what scared me most. It meant there could be more. Dozens, maybe even hundreds. And then came the third. She wasn't anonymous. Her name was Stephanie Halberd, and she was angry. She didn't want protection. She wanted exposure. She posted a comment on Eliza's blog saying, "This man destroyed my life in 2009. I'm done hiding." Within hours, her post was shared across social media, accompanied by a photo of her at 17, standing next to our father at a corporate picnic. His arm draped over her shoulder, smiling. Stephanie's story was worse, because she had tried to report it. She told her parents. They had gone to the company, filed a complaint. But he denied it, had alibis, and worse, he had power, influence, friends in the right places. The case vanished. Stephanie's family moved across the country after that. She dropped out of college 2 years later. Her life was never the same. It all unraveled like a ball of twine kicked down a staircase. Every new name, every old story, pulled more into the light. Some were adults now, some still kids when it happened. A few had never told anyone until they read Eliza's words. Her truth became a trigger for theirs. A dam had broken. The police couldn't ignore it anymore. With multiple statements and cross-verifications, they reclassified our father from person of interest to suspect in a pattern of abuse. And then, finally, they arrested him. I'll never forget the image. Him in handcuffs, head bowed, led down our driveway while camera crews swarmed outside the gates. My mother and I watched from inside. She didn't say a word, just stood at the window, lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't even relief. It was grief. Raw and bottomless. After all, she had loved him once. The weeks that followed were chaos. The press descended like vultures, circling every corner of our lives. Old friends stopped calling. Some neighbors looked at us like we were radioactive. Others sent kind messages, some even apologies, but it didn't matter. The damage had been done. I remember sitting on the back porch one night, staring at the overgrown garden, wondering if I'd ever feel normal again, wondering if any of us would. That's when Eliza called. Not messaged, not emailed. She called. "I need you to listen," she said, her voice tight with something. Tension, maybe, or hesitation. "Okay?" I whispered. "There's something I didn't write about in the blog, something I couldn't explain." But my heart stopped. "What is it?" She hesitated. It wasn't just him. There was someone else. For a second, the air felt sucked out of the world. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I think he had help." She paused, like she was choosing her words carefully. There were times, especially when I was really young, when I'd wake up in places I didn't remember going to. The basement, sometimes the attic. Once even the backseat of the car. And I wasn't alone. I remember voices, laughter, someone taking pictures, but not just him. I felt sick. "You think he was letting others?" "I don't know," she said quickly. "I'm not sure. My memories are broken, foggy. But I remember a name. I've been digging. Quietly. There's someone I need to find." Someone I think might still be out there. Eliza, you're not alone anymore. You shouldn't do this by yourself. I'm not doing it for revenge, she said. I'm doing it to understand. I need to know why. Why he did it. Why they did. I need the whole truth. And just like that, the story changed again. It wasn't just about our father anymore. It was about something bigger. A web of complicity. A chain of silence. Eliza had found a name. A man who had worked with our dad at the time she was 12. He had retired early, moved to the mountains. A family friend. Someone I vaguely remembered visiting once when I was little. A blurry memory of a cabin, laughter, hot chocolate. I never thought about him again until now. I'm going to him, Eliza said. No, you can't. What if he? I'll be careful. I just want to look him in the eyes. See if he remembers me. See if he remembers what they did. I begged her not to. I told Mom. We tried everything. But Eliza had made up her mind. And when she made up her mind, there was no stopping her. She left that same night. For days, I didn't hear from her. I tried not to spiral, but my imagination filled in every blank with the worst. Every minute that passed felt like 1 inch closer to something I couldn't name. The blog went silent. The phone never rang. And then, exactly 7 days later, she sent a message. I was right. That's all it said. No context. No explanation. Just those 3 words. But the photos came next. Old photographs. Scanned age, watermarked by time. Kids, girls, mostly, posing awkwardly in front of a fireplace. The same cabin I remembered. Same furniture. Same man. And in the background of one picture him. Our father. Clear as day. There was no way to mistake it. He wasn't just there once. He was there often. Multiple pictures, spanning years. He hadn't just visited. He had been involved. Part of something. That man, Mr. Price, wasn't just a colleague. He was the organizer. Eliza didn't confront him. She didn't have to. The moment he saw her at his front door, she said, his face went pale. Not confusion, recognition. Fear. She took what she needed. Left before sunset. When she sent everything to the police, they opened a second investigation. This time, it wasn't just about our father. It was about an alleged network. Men with families, reputations, influence, and secrets buried in photo albums and memory cards. More victims came forward. Some even knew each other. Their stories aligned, like puzzle pieces falling into place. The horror wasn't just in what happened, but in how long it had been hidden, protected, normalized by those involved. And yet, through it all, Eliza remained steady, like she had trained her whole life for this moment. Not to destroy, but to expose. Not to hate, but to heal. She didn't want vengeance. She wanted the truth to live in the open, no longer rotting beneath floorboards or buried in forgotten notebooks. Mom and I stood by her. We testified when asked. We shared what we knew. And when the trials began, the courtrooms were filled not with vengeance but with testimony. Truth laid bare, wound by wound, until the entire house of lies our father had built came crumbling down. He was convicted. So was Mr. Price. More arrests followed. But none of it brought peace. Not yet. Because there was still one twist left. One truth we hadn't seen coming. One that would turn even this horror into something deeper. Something irreversible. And it was waiting, quietly, in the very last page of the diary. The one none of us had thought to turn. We had all read the diary, every page of it. At least, we thought we had. From the trembling confessions to the cryptic fragments of memory. From the fear-drenched entries to the seething anger that bubbled near the end. Those pages had been our guiding torch in the darkness. They were what set everything into motion. They were what forced the truth out of hiding. But we missed something. It wasn't hidden in the middle or tucked inside the cover. It was the final page, one glued delicately to the backboard, seemingly blank. Eliza hadn't meant for it to be read. It looked like a support page, just an extra leaf to protect the last written thoughts. But one day, while I was sifting through the scanned copies for the police, trying to piece together a timeline, I noticed a faint indentation on that page. Barely visible, like something had been written and then erased or pressed hard enough to leave an imprint without ink. I held the page up to the light. Still nothing. But when I shaded it lightly with pencil, the words began to rise. Not a paragraph, not even a sentence. Just 3 chilling lines written with all the strength a trembling, terrified girl could summon. She knew. She helped. She said it was the only way. I didn't understand until later, but the graphite blurred in my shaking hands. My lungs forgot how to breathe. I stared at the words, my brain refusing to believe them even as they screamed louder with every second. She helped. Who? Who was she talking about? I called Eliza immediately. She answered after 3 rings. I didn't waste time. Did you write something on the last page of the diary? Something you didn't tell us? There was a pause, a long one. You found it? She said. Eliza, what does it mean? She didn't answer. I could hear her breathing. You said she helped. Who is she? I didn't want to believe it, Eliza whispered. For years, I told myself I imagined it, that it was a dream. I blocked it out, shoved it deep down. But the memory started coming back during the trial prep. Not all at once, just flashes. Her voice, her hands, the way she looked at me when she said, "This is the only way." I didn't understand then. I was too young. Eliza, who was it? Another silence. And then, barely audible, Mom. Everything in me recoiled. My body physically rejected the words. No, that wasn't possible. Mom was the one who cried for Eliza, who carried her picture in her purse for years, who slept in my room the night we confronted Dad, who turned him in, who burned with guilt. No, that couldn't be. I know how it sounds, Eliza said. But I remember. The night it started, she was there. She brought me down to the basement. She said it would be quick, that I wouldn't remember anything. I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't even cry. I just lay there, frozen. No, I said, my voice hollow. She didn't know. She couldn't have. She protected me. She protected you? Eliza snapped. Because she couldn't face what she'd already done to me. The call ended. I dropped the phone. The house swirled around me. My mind raced through every moment I'd ever shared with our mother. Her tears, her guilt. Were they real? Or just performances? Rehearsed and perfect? Had we been pawns in something even worse than betrayal? Was our whole lives a theater of guilt management? That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I didn't think straight. I just remembered. I remembered all the times Mom had been vague when I asked about Eliza's childhood. The inconsistencies. The way she changed the subject. The way she once told me, "Some truths are too heavy for children." I thought she meant Dad. Now I wasn't so sure. I didn't confront her immediately. I watched. I studied. I looked at her like she was a stranger. She hummed while cooking, smiled softly at strangers. She still wore the same perfume, still folded laundry in the exact same way. Tight, square, neat. She seemed like the same woman who raised me. But I couldn't shake it, that knowing, rotting suspicion. So I did something desperate. I broke into her locked desk drawer while she was in the shower. I know how that sounds, but I had to know. I had to see. Inside, I found letters. Not from Eliza, from him. My father, dated years after the arrest. Hidden, unopened envelopes with his handwriting. He had been writing her from prison. They were all marked RTR to Sin and R. But none had been destroyed. She'd kept them. Why? I opened the most recent one. It began, "I still remember the deal we made." I nearly vomited. The letter went on to describe how they had once agreed to something unspoken, but understood. That they'd never revisit the night of the decision, and that he would take the fall if it came to it, because it had to be one of us. It didn't describe what the deal was, but it didn't need to. I collapsed onto the floor. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My heart was pounding in my throat. I'd uncovered something darker than anything I thought possible. Not just abuse, not just enabling, a partnership, a shared, unholy pact between two people who should have been protectors. And then, behind the stack of letters, I found the final piece, a USB drive. I should have thrown it away. I should have taken it to the police immediately. but I plugged it into my laptop like a fool with a death wish. There was one folder, titled Jala. Inside were files, scanned notes, voice memos, even a few old photos. Not of Eliza, not of them, together, in a car, in a field, laughing. The timestamps were damning, taken just months before Eliza disappeared, months after Mom had claimed to cut all ties. I clicked on the audio file. It was scratchy, muffled, but their voices were unmistakable. Her voice, my mother's. "I know what you did," she said coldly. "I know what you're going to do again. But don't you ever bring her into it. She's mine. Eliza was yours. That was the deal." Bahi laughed. "And then, you always knew how to negotiate." The audio clicked off. I sat in silence, staring at the blank screen, the weight of the final line like a lead blanket on my chest. "Eliza was yours." As if they had divided us like property. As if we were roles in a twisted agreement, one to be protected, one to be sacrificed. I didn't cry, I couldn't. My body had gone numb. All I could do was listen to the silence around me and understand the horrifying truth. Mom wasn't an accomplice in hindsight. She hadn't just ignored the signs. She was there. From the beginning, she chose her side. And the worst part, she chose me. She let Eliza fall so I could stay clean. And I never knew. The truth, now fully formed, was more than a story. It was a weapon. A bomb I could detonate with a single email. A single blog post. A single sentence to the police. But what would it cost? What would Eliza want? What would justice even look like when the person who held your hand through childhood was the one who bartered you into safety at someone else's expense? I closed the laptop. I sat there in the quiet, and I waited for the weight of it all to crush me. I waited for days, but the crushing never came. What came instead was something colder. A kind of hollow resolve, like everything I had believed in had been incinerated, and now I was just standing in the ashes, blinking at the smoke. You'd think the hardest part would be the shock, the betrayal, the horror, but it wasn't. It was the stillness after. That bitter quiet when you realize that this is your new truth now, and there's no going back. I didn't tell Mom. Not right away. I didn't scream or confront or demand. I didn't break the USB or call the cops or run into Eliza's arms. I did nothing, and I hated myself for it. I spent those days doing small things, meaningless things. I cleaned the garage. I rearranged books on the shelf alphabetically. I stood in front of mirrors trying to see something different in my face. Some trace of her, or him, or the sick compromise that tied them together. But I looked the same. I was the same. And yet everything inside me was rearranged beyond recognition. I was born from a deal. That's what haunted me most. Not the abuse, not the lies, but the fact that my mother chose to save me by condemning Eliza. She'd made that choice before I was even old enough to know who I was. She picked her favorite and shielded her, while letting her firstborn be torn apart from the inside out. A part of me wondered if Eliza had always known. If every soft smile she gave me, every quiet "I love you" was tangled up with resentment she never voiced. I thought of how she left, how she wrote that final page and tucked it deep, not because she didn't want it found, but because she wanted me to be the one who found it. I was her final witness. And now, it was time to decide what kind of person I really was. So I made the call, not to the police, not to the press, to Eliza. She answered, and before I could speak, she said, "You found it?" I did. "Are you okay?" I didn't answer. She didn't ask again. "I need to know something," I finally said. "When you wrote that, when you remembered what she did, why didn't you destroy the diary? Why let it sit there for years?" She was quiet for a long time. Then, because I needed you to find it. Not the police, not Mom, you. I wanted you to decide what comes next. Not because I didn't have the strength, but because it never should have been my burden alone. My throat closed up. She added, "I wanted to know if you'd choose to protect the lie or expose the truth, even if it meant destroying everything you thought was good." The final test, not for her. For me, I told her about the USB, the recordings, the letters, every word. She didn't sound surprised. I always wondered, she said. There were moments, things she'd say that didn't line up, but I was too broken to put the puzzle together. And by the time I started to remember, I didn't want it to be true, not her. Not after everything. She protected me, I said, my voice cracking. She sacrificed me to do it. Eliza replied. I could hear her pacing on the other end. Do you still love her? I asked. She didn't answer for a long time. Then, I don't know, maybe, but I don't forgive her. Not for that. Not for what she let happen to me. I swallowed hard. So what do we do? You already know. The next day, I handed everything to the authorities. The diary, the USB, the printed letters. I gave a full statement. I told the whole story from the knock on the door to the final page. The officers didn't speak much. They just nodded grimly, collected the evidence, and told me someone would be in touch. That night, I told Mom. She was in the kitchen making tea. She turned to smile at me. Soft and sweet, that same maternal warmth I'd seen 1,000 times. And I nearly collapsed under the weight of it. I found something, I said. She froze. Her hands trembled slightly. She didn't ask what it was. She didn't try to pretend. Letters, I said. From him. Audio. From you, I know everything. She didn't cry. She sat down slowly, like her bones were suddenly heavier than she could bear. For a moment, I thought she was going to try and explain it away. To say I misunderstood. That it was all a performance for his benefit. That she was scared. But instead, she said, I didn't think you'd ever know. I stared at her, disbelief burning like acid in my chest. You let it happen. Her voice cracked. I tried to stop it by delivering her to him. She covered her face, and for the first time, I saw the truth behind her grief. It wasn't pain, it wasn't guilt, it was cowardice. Plain, hollow cowardice. The kind that chooses silence over suffering. That convinces itself survival is a form of love. I thought if I gave him what he wanted once, he'd stop. She whispered. He told me he would. He said it was a compulsion, not a habit. He said I could choose which child would be hurt. I didn't believe him, but I didn't know what else to do. And after he didn't touch you, I thought maybe I had saved at least one of you. The bile rose in my throat. You didn't save me. You made me a reason she wasn't Ba. She sobbed, shaking her head. I didn't know what to do. You knew, I said, standing now. You just didn't want to live with the alternative. She reached for me. I stepped back. I've already spoken to the police. I told her, they'll come for you soon. The look she gave me then wasn't anger. It wasn't even fear. It was acceptance. Maybe in some warped part of her mind. She had always been waiting for this. Maybe she knew it would come one day. Truth clawing its way through the cracks like weeds through pavement. But she never stopped it. She let it fester. She let it grow. When they came to take her, she didn't resist. The community that once saw us as victims now didn't know what to think. Half pitied us, half judged. Headlines splashed the words, "Mother knew," stayed silent, across the internet. People debated whether she was a victim or a villain. They didn't understand that sometimes the two aren't opposites. Sometimes they are co-conspirators in the same tragedy. Eliza and I sat on the courthouse steps weeks later. The wind was sharp. We didn't talk much. She stared ahead at nothing. I watched her face and tried to find traces of the sister I knew. The one who braided my hair before school, who read me stories late at night, who vanished with a whisper and returned like a flame through smoke. You still have nightmares? I asked. Every night, she said. We sat in silence again. Do you think it ends here? I asked her. She turned to me. No, but maybe this is where our part ends. I didn't understand at first, but I would. A week later, she disappeared again. No note, no blog post, just gone. But this time, it wasn't running, it was release. She left a new entry on her blog, the final one. There will always be monsters, and sometimes they wear the face of someone you loved. But I believe in something stronger than monsters. I believe in truth. I believe in the courage of those who rise up and say this ends with me. I am leaving this story behind. It is not all of who I am. But it is how I became free. It didn't go viral. It wasn't shared a million times. But the people who needed it found it. Survivors, fighters, people who had buried their pain in silence and now dared to say it out loud. I still live in the house. Not because I love it, but because I refuse to let it become a graveyard. I replaced the floors, tore out the carpet, painted the basement walls white. Sometimes people ask why I don't leave. I tell them, because leaving wouldn't be healing, it would be hiding. Eliza writes me postcards now, never from the same place. Sometimes they just say, thinking of you. Sometimes she tells me about the ocean, or a new book, or a woman she met who reminded her that kindness still exists. I keep them all in a box under my bed. We're not a family anymore. Not in the way people expect. But we're still something. We're the aftermath. We're the truth that refused to stay buried. We're the ones who lit the match, watched the house burn, and walked into the smoke holding hands. And maybe, just maybe, that's how you break a curse? By being the first to say it happened, and the last to say it ends here. Thanks for watching the video, subscribe, and like the video.